Welcome to Open Studio, a podcast where I invite artists that I know and admire to come and talk to me about all things creative. My guest today is one of my closest friends and also one of the most creative people I've ever known in my life. His name is Connor Brady, and he's a musician, a painter, and a writer. And in this episode, we talk about all kinds of things, from bringing art to the streets to collaborative painting. We talk about gatekeeping in the art world and silliness in art. We also talk about incorporating sound and smell into visual art, and all kinds of things in between. Before we dive into the episode, please excuse the bad audio quality. I'm still in the process of trying to find the best way to record these episodes, both remotely and also here in person at the studio. But until I have my hands on all the right equipment, I'm just asking for a little bit of forgiveness from all of you. Also, if you haven't already, please go and check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video, or if you're listening elsewhere, it's patreon.com/Kilo Blimp. It's a really great way to stay connected with everything that I'm doing, but especially with this podcast. I'm going to be uploading every single episode of this podcast early to Patreon. I'm also going to be announcing my upcoming guests on Patreon, and I'm also going to be taking questions on Patreon. So if there's a guest coming up that you're interested in or you like what they do and you'd like to ask them something, you'll be able to submit a question and I'll choose one or two to ask at the end of every episode. There's lots of other goodies on there as well. It's a really, really big help to me. I'm very committed to not accepting any paid sponsorships or brand deals on any of my social media platforms. It's something that just doesn't really sit right with me. But what that means is that I'm relying on the generosity and kindness of people like you to make sure that I can keep doing what I'm doing and sharing it. So with that, let's get into the episode.
And I saw artists doing that in the street. I saw them like just setting up, which is a huge thing.
At the flea market?
Yeah, which is a huge thing politically because you think about what you were saying with the Czech Republic, you have to have this permit. It seems like it's a little bit more like there's more like gatekeeping to like being able to participate in like the art market like openly like that. Whereas here...
I don't want to... Yeah, go ahead.
Here, people just go out and set up like a booth. And you don't have to have a permit, as far as I can tell. Like, that's what they were doing out there, you know what I'm saying? I was...
Man, see, that's amazing. And I don't, like, based on my limited knowledge and what I've heard, like, peripherally from some people here, I think you do have to have a permit. But I also don't know if that means, like, specifically for certain sites. So, like, you know, like, when you were here, for example, like, on the Charles Bridge and, like, all of these really big touristy sites, there's a lot of people who are selling artwork or, like, doing caricatures, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, I'm certain that you do have to have some kind of permit to be, like, located on one of those big sites. That being said, man, like, I don't know what the deal is for, like, if I were just to wander into a park and, like, set up a little booth. Like, I don't know.
You could
love to do something like that.
You can. I mean, that's what I saw these people doing. They were just, like, I mean, dude, there was literally people with, like, rusty shit just sitting on a blanket. Like, you can do, like...
But, man, like, I love that concept so much, dude. It's, like, for me, it's, like, an extension of what we're already doing with Fruit Juice Collective now, where we're, like, doing all these shows and, like, exhibitions... Exactly. But like we're also trying to do it in a way where it's not exclusive and it's not like just going to galleries and shit, but like we actually want to go to like cafes and bars and like places where like people are going and frequenting and living their lives. But I feel like this is the next level of it where it's like really on the street selling paintings to people who are wandering by, like meeting people. That's such a cool thing, dude. And then it's like you have this experience of being like face to face with whoever comes by. And
that's the best. That's the greatest pleasure in it.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you can maybe sell a painting, like, or you can have some prints. People will absolutely scoop that up. But like, the best part is just like that, like interface that you have with like random people walking by. You know what I'm saying? Like, people engage you. Like, I don't know. There's so much. Like, I found this chessboard that this guy had that was like literally like 50 pounds, like just pure marble, like green and red marble, gorgeous. And I'm like, okay, buddy, like, where are the chess pieces? He's like, well, I didn't bring them with me because I've been trying to sell this thing forever, because I would imagine anybody who would be considering buying it would like pick it up and for 1 second, like, feel like I can't fucking get this thing back to where I'm going. But I'm like, look, dude, if you bring those things next week and I love them, I will buy this thing from you. You know what I'm saying? He's like, so he's going to bring me this chessboard.
That's
but I mean,
awesome, man. That's so
the
sick.
point is it is like, it is active interface with like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? There's no like government gatekeeping happening there for the people to like go out and try to sell their wares. You know what I'm saying? Or their grandma's
dude,
rusty ass, their grandma's rusty ass like kitchen mixer. Like,
Man, I love that. I love that. I love it, especially when it comes to like trying to sell art to people, because like, I don't know, that's a big part of what I like, what I enjoy about what I do is like, let's say someone asks me for a commission, like I always, especially if they live in Prague, I try and go and meet up with them in person before we do anything, just because I like to actually have a conversation with someone and like get to know them, and then it makes the whole process more personal. But like, I miss out on a lot of that when I'm like selling a painting to somebody who lives, 500 miles away. Or like someone who like isn't locally available. So yeah, I really like that idea, dude. It's fucking awesome.
I know, because before, like, you had that was all it was, unless people were mailing you like and inquiring or making like a direct phone call. You know what I'm saying? With social media, it's like you can easily just be completely isolated and yet still fully connected, and that's, to me, I mean, it's missing out on the whole idea of what inspires you to make art to begin with, and that for me is the exterior world, like the people that I interact with, the cause in which I'm integrating my own lifestyle, my own like artistic like decision making is going to be like inspired by and influenced and ultimately for, in reciprocity, the community in which I live,
And man, for me as well, what I'm finding is like the more that I rely on social media to like run a business and try and like reach customers and shit, like the less that I enjoy it, dude. It just feels like I have to in a way, because it's like the most convenient
It's a drudgery.
tool available.
Yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately, man, like it is not my first choice for how I would like to approach people and how I would like to be able to like bring people art if they want to buy it or just look at it, either way. Like and so like, I don't know. I know that we had this conversation about this exact idea like maybe a few months ago, and I was like very adamantly against it for some reason. And like now thinking back on it, dude, like I genuinely can't remember why I was being like so stubborn.
It wasn't just a few months ago. I remember like when we were in Ann Arbor, and I was like, dude, we should go and just lay a blanket out, and like, who cares if we have a permit or not, and just do it until they tell us to pack it up. Like,
I know, man.
We never did it.
I don't know. I don't know what that mentality was, but dude, I know the concept is
I think the mentality was for you was not that you didn't want to do it. It was that there was the hoops and rules that you had to break and hoops that you have to jump through. Either you're going to break rules or you're going to jump through hoops. And neither of those two things were what you were interested in doing. And that's fine.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Yeah.
Which is why for me, like going out and seeing these people and being like, okay, what's the story? I mean, I just was able to gauge the situation. I mean, these were just like watercolor artists and like people that were like selling like random stuff. And it wasn't like your tourist, like kitschy stuff. It wasn't like the paintings of those like yellow trolley things that roll through here. They were like actual like original expressions and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Man, that's awesome. That's also why I'm excited to come and visit you there, because like I feel like sometimes that element of Prague is missing, where it's just like art out in the streets, like shit that's going on the ground level, and like there's a little bit of it here and there, but not nearly as much as what you're describing in Lisbon.
I think it's
sad to me.
I think
it's like that's. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it's like a thing to do with like the latitudes of the Earth, like a magnetic resonance frequency. Because everywhere that I've been that's like south far enough, like I just see people being like way more like DIY. You know what I'm saying?
I also think it's like pace of life there, right? Like at least my impression, I've never been, but from what you describe and like what I've heard from other people, like I think there's a different kind of mentality or perspective about like how quickly you move through life, or like what's important and what to prioritize. And I also think because number one, because the weather's nicer generally, but also because like the culture has more of like a communal aspect where like people really like to build community and engage with each other, and it's like that kind of, I don't know, whereas the Czech Republic, dude, is like, I mean, I love the Czech Republic, I love Czech people, I love lots of things about living here, but I ultimately like I feel like they're a little bit more closed off, like it's a little bit more isolated and people kind of stick to themselves. So that idea of like going out into the street and like making it happen publicly is just it's
just one component. Like I said, this market happens twice a week. It happens on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So like while I think it's essential that you have like your time of introspection working indoors and stuff, I think the more that you're able to diversify the places where you are interfacing with your art, the better, right? Yeah. So if like you can do it both with Instagram or with the internet, and then also like have this twice a week where you get to go out and set up your stuff in like a little booth, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's like having many different sources of ways that you can, curate what you're doing and like continue to do what you're doing is that to me is like the spice that would make it way more entertaining and like worth your time.
Yeah, and dude, the thing for me as well is like a lot of the times, like, okay, so like on Instagram, like, or if I'm just relying on social media, sometimes I'm like waiting for opportunities to come to me. Like I'm like, oh, well, maybe so. Like I'll get like a random message from
or just popping a lot of energy
every once in a while. Yeah, whereas like, man, if I was just posted up like in a park somewhere, like number one, I just think like I'd have a lot more conversations to begin with. Like you would start a lot more conversations and then you never know where that leads, right? It might lead into an opportunity or like someone might be like, hey, I would love to do a commission or, oh, I have this like idea for a project. Do you want to work with me on this? Like, I just think you're giving yourself more opportunities to start the conversation and see where it takes you. And I think like, man, that's something that I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely missing, but I really do need to look into the laws because like, I don't really want to go out there and like, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't want to get fined, basically. Like, more than anything.
No, absolutely.
I think pay the cops a bunch of money.
I think it would be worth it to just try to get like the permission to do it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, as long as you don't have to renew it like every 6 months or whatever, then I think it could be very, very worth it. Yeah, it's like when you get out in the park and you set up like that's like the real version of sitting and waiting for your DMs to roll in. Like.
Yeah, but the difference is that like, man, the interaction that you have face to face with someone is so different because there's like a little bit more like social responsibility, right? Where it's like someone can just ignore your message on Instagram without any repercussions, right? Because they live in another country. Versus like if you start a conversation with someone in person, you're already kind of like there's a little bit more commitment there, and that doesn't mean that like anything comes of it, but usually it does lead to like at least a longer discourse and like a little bit more of like a fleshed out interaction.
Yeah, you feel like you have closure as opposed to just being left on red.
Week, man, like I've had this, communicating with this person who is interested in a commission, and then like it gets to the point where I send them my price list, and like we're going back and forth about it. They have some questions, and then it's just all of a sudden nothing, and it ignores the message, and it's so frustrating, man. And I'm not saying that like if I interacted with this person like in real life that they would have gone through the commission, but maybe at least there would have been a little bit more like respect there, and a little bit more like mutual understanding of like, oh well, I'm actually not interested. Thank you very much. Like,
can you imagine if we interacted like we do with that like internet discourse? Like you're just like you're like, all right, so you drop the big question, they just turn around and walk away.
I mean, dude, that's people be losing their minds.
Yeah, dude, that's like some robot shit, dude. So yeah, I think the moral of what we were getting at there is the spice, which makes pursuing like a career in art, coming from someone who absolutely is not in that world yet, is by having a well-rounded way in which you interface with your community, whether it's digitally and you're doing it for focusing on like, being a more like enclosed environment where you're like making the art in your studio or getting out and meeting people in the street. But actually now that I hear myself voice that out loud, I hear more like that's not what I'm trying to say, actually. That I think that like the creation of your art happens in whatever way that you do it. And I think that's going to probably tend to be more in seclusion in your studio, right? But when you go out, I mean, let's just face this fact. Going out into the community is going to be a lot more fulfilling for selling your art than it is going to be sending people DMs. Unless you are like extremely introverted and you don't like to be around people. You know what I'm saying?
Speak from experience as someone who does a lot of both, honestly. Like I do spend a lot of time and energy on social media, especially like over the past 6 months, even more than I used to, because it does allow me to like reach a bigger audience, and it gives me more opportunities. But like I would say 90% of those interactions or like opportunities that I get from social media and Instagram in particular, they're not nearly as enjoyable or as much fun for me or as fulfilling, like you said, as the ones that I experience when I'm dealing with people here in this city in person, whether that's like at a show opening and talking to somebody, or meeting up with someone to get a coffee and like talking over the details of a commission that they want. Like all of that, man, is always makes me feel way better. And it also, for me, in a weird way, like it makes the paintings themselves more valuable to me, in the sense that like I have a personal relationship with the thing that I created, and the person who purchases it also has a more like intimate personal relationship with me, the person who created it. And then that in and of itself becomes something that's, for me, it's more interesting to look back on.
I just think all around it's more enjoyable. And I do want to make an amendment to what we're saying as well. You can make art in the streets, and I think that's honestly something which should be explored. Like I think the way that people I think a lot of people tend to think when they have someone who's making art in the street, they tend to view it as like someone who's working on like a little 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper, or like something that's like, you know, the size of what you could roll up and stick in your pocket, right? But I think it would be fascinating to have like someone working on like a larger scale, like maybe something that's like, you know, a lot like the size of this tapestry, right? Seeing someone doing that in the street, or I mean, the other thing too is working with murals. Can you imagine like having like a booth like set up next to a wall that you've had permission to paint, that you have like also like prints and like other paintings and things, and you get to talk to people as you're painting a mural in the city in which people inhabit?
I mean, yeah, dude, that might happen this summer with Fruit Juice Collective, because we just booked this mural to do on the side of like this football stadium, and it's in a very public place where like a bunch of trams go by. And so my impression is that while we're painting it, there will definitely be people walking, which is super cool. But I also want to like kind of go back to your concept of like painting out in public, like a larger scale painting. Man, I have serious reservations about that. And I think the reason is because I'm not able to paint freely if I feel like I'm being watched. Like, even if I have someone over here at the studio, like there was this guy who was like shooting some little documentary, and he interviewed me and wanted to get like B-roll of me painting. And as we were doing it, I felt so uncomfortable, like because I felt like someone was watching me. Like I was so aware that this other person was there, and not just like if someone's like, I don't know, like just wandering around, like doing their own thing in my apartment, I don't really give a shit. But if someone's like actively paying attention to my creative process, it throws me off, man. I really don't enjoy it. And so
that's just your preference, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying like in general that I disagree. That's just for me personally. I would have a hard time like going out in public and just like working on a big painting, because I think I would feel very stifled. But like, yeah, for you maybe, dude, that's something to explore, right? Like, if that's
here's the thing.
You're interested in.
I don't necessarily want to do that either. I don't want to go work on a big canvas in a public space. Yeah. But I think that with this specific space that I live in right now, there is a way to synthesize that where you have 60% private, 40% public. So it's just barely swung far enough on the pendulum over to the side where it's like, yes, I could be actively working on a large painting while displaying my art in here and having people come in for a cup of coffee. Like, it's literally, the street is right there. Like, I can open these doors, put a little sign out. Like, I just found one at the China store yesterday. And whoever wants to come in here, like, have you ever been inside of like a booth art studio where there's someone who has like a storefront and they're just in there painting and they have their paintings on display? Like, you walk in and they're in like mid-process.
I have, but a very long time ago in Indonesia. Like, that's the last time that I remember seeing something like that.
Right. So that's why this is a cool space for me, and exciting as I'm getting settled in here, trying to piece together like, okay, like logistically, I'm going out in the street and like looking at what kind of bureaucracy might stand before me in doing this. And from what I can tell, it is fairly like invent your way here. It's not like they're going to be impeding on my freedom and saying, you can't have an art gallery in your living room kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
You know,
I hope not, man.
well, if something happens, I'm going to go with the card where like I'm able to say, I'll be like, these aren't for sale. You know, this is like, I'm not going to put prices on any of the things that are hanging in here.
Yeah.
And it's going to more so be a way for people who are walking by to come in, have a chat. I'll make them coffee, literally. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
and just chill. You know, it's really perfect. I mean, all this furniture can easily fit into the back bedroom there, and I have a little cafe table in the kitchen. I'll put that, you know, there and have like an easel in the corner and hang like 6 paintings up and just see who I can run into who happens to walk through my door.
Dude, I'm so jealous, to be honest, man, because I think like right now you have this perfect setup to be able to make this a reality. Like it literally could not be better for you in terms of like where you are in the city, like how open your apartment is on the ground floor, like you almost feel like you're living on the street. Like I think it's so sick,
even
man.
now as I'm sitting here talking to you, people are coming and looking and sticking their heads in my window.
But man,
it's like I'm on a stage. It's crazy.
It's like even I've had this idea in my mind before, like that I would love to do like a little exhibition, like a pop-up show in my apartment, right? But it's just so much more logistically complicated for me because at least right now, like I live in a walk-up 5 stories up, so like people would have to walk up 5 flights of stairs. It's off of a really busy road that's like got like crazy traffic on it. Like it's just not conducive to having a bunch of people come over, right? Whereas and look, I could do it in a way where I invite people over, which would be cool, and I might still do that. But there's something to me that's way more exciting and interesting about just like having
people
it out in exactly. Just have like random passersby like wandering in, stopping to say hi, like peek their head in through the window, and you're like, "Hey, you want a cup of coffee?" Like dude, that's the fucking dream. I love that.
Right?
That's so sick, man. And the fact that you're gonna make it a reality is very exciting. But it also means that I'm going to come and visit you a lot, and we're going to set up shop together and do that shit together.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I can get what you need here to keep your commissions going. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're going to be starting something new and you time it so that you travel and get here, like I've got a solid source of large scale canvases that I mean, are you tending to pull off stretcher bars and roll and send, or are you doing both It
depends, man. I always ask. So, like, if I'm shipping a painting internationally, I usually recommend rolling it up. Most of the time because the shipping is way cheaper. But like, if somebody wants it on the frame, I'm happy to do it. It just ends up being way more expensive.
Sure. Now, as far as the depth of your frame goes, are you doing 1 inch?
No.
You're doing 1/2 inch.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 centimeters versus 4.
I mean, I don't even know, dude. I could look at one. Like, based off of what I'm looking at right now, my guess is that it could be 1 inch. It's 2 centimeters, maybe 2 centimeters. I don't know.
Okay, so those are the ones, dude, those are the same ones they're selling in this China shop.
It's not like a gallery wrapped canvas. So, you know the ones that are really thick? Like, that's not what I'm using. I'm just using like a pretty standard, like, wrapped.
Dude, they have thousands of canvases in this store. The biggest one was like probably like 6 feet by 6 feet. I'm not even kidding you. And it was like 25 euros.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I forgot to take a picture. I'll
excuse me. Can you go and like send me some photos the next time you're there?
Yeah, when I go back there to finally get my supplies. I'm waiting for my Portuguese bank card to get here.
Okay.
Because I'm sick of well, they don't accept a U.S. bank card at that China show. Right. So I don't want to continue to withdraw euros because they have the international ATM fee.
Yeah. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I mean, look, either way, I think the idea of like, if you have access to like cheap supplies or like some canvases that are pretty readily available around the corner from you, man, I love the idea of like coming there for a week and just posting up and like working on a commission or working on a specific painting, right? And then like also like, I mean, in an ideal world, it would be even cooler if I could bring a bunch of shit like paintings with me. You know what I mean? And then it's like,
Yeah.
have a little like, hey, this is Connor's stuff. This is my stuff. This
There's
is
2 walls in here that are very large that you could put both of them up on.
Yeah. So then it's almost worthwhile to like have a longer trip and like spend some time like making 2 or 3 paintings and having a little pop-up show. And what I could just like promote it and say like, hey, I'm gonna be in Lisbon for 3 weeks. Like, if you're around, come stop in, like, while we're painting and hanging out with my boy Connor.
Yeah.
And then, like, there'll be a little show. We'll, like, get some champagne or something for people to come and drink. And, like, that would be sick, man. That would be so much fun.
I'm not even kidding you, though. You wouldn't even need to do that. And you could, if we open up shop, right? We open up shop. We're going hard in the paint, right? We're painting. We're getting things hung up here. Dude, I guarantee you, this would become like controversially like bumping. Like it would go into the night. It would go into the nighttime, and I would be like, all right, this is, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not kidding you. Like that's kind of the status quo. Like if it was on a Friday or a Saturday, it would probably be fine. It would be like a house party. But if it ended up, I mean, dude, we could easily do it every fucking night of the week, and people would be like going hamski here. Like, and it would be like you'd have to like. You'd have to put some reins on it, dude. It would just pop off too hard, I think.
People but if it's a once in a while thing, man, I think you could get away with it. It wouldn't get like too rowdy. It's just
I think it would be cool to have it like once a week. You have like, and ends up being a party. You know what I'm saying?
The thing is, okay, so like just from my own experience too, with like Fruit Juice Collective and all of the shows that we started doing last year, like what we found at the beginning, we were trying to do 1 show a month. And it was just the pace of it was too much, man. Like it's too much work.
No, but Julian, that's the thing that I think you're confusing here is that like you are living your daily life working as an artist, creating the output of art that you need to create.
Yes.
But in a way that's synthesizing the public element of it being like you're always doing a show here. It's always a show. People are always, you know what I'm saying?
That's a different thing. Maybe I misunderstood.
That's why,
that's just like, actually, you know what that is, man? Is the epitome of the name of this podcast, which is Open Studio. Because that literally is.
This is the Open Studio.
It is. Dude, you are living in the Open Studio.
Oh my God.
Like, I mean, it's nuts, man.
It just happenstance, dude. Happened to stumble fucking.
I still can't believe like the situation that you found yourself in, man. I think it's like it's so ridiculous and perfect. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is, dude. But yeah, man, have you like I know you've been kind of exploring like meeting some other musicians and stuff since you've been there. Have you interacted with any artists? Like, do you feel like there's a scene there that you can get tapped into? So
because anyone who might be listening right now doesn't know the context about what happened yesterday, I can kind of give a little bit of info about it because it was a very serendipitous situation that had us reeling a little bit. I was in the China shop, the very same China shop in which we've referred to previously, and there was a girl sitting there listening to headphones, and I was like, do you know where I could get some like more like medium grade paints? Like I wasn't trying to get like the high end stuff, but you know, the stuff they sell in the China shop separates with the water and you just gotta like shake it up and it's just nasty, like it's like moldy. I've like opened that stuff up before and it comes out in like clay or like just like juicy. But and we just got into talking about like, you know, I don't even know how it came up, but she's like, well, do you have an Instagram? And I was like, yeah. And she gave me her phone to type in my username. And then when I found myself, I click on it and she followed you. And I was like, what are the chances of this person in, you know, I mean, I don't know. She was like, you know, like I said yesterday, she was like, oh, he has 25,000 followers. So maybe like, that's why. But at the same time, I'm like, no, that just seems insane. Like 27,000 versus like how many fucking people in the like continent or like in the world that I mean, dude, the chances that is serendipitous, right? Yeah. So there's the context. Now I don't remember where we were going with that context. What were we going to say after that?
No, I was just more curious about like because I know you mentioned that you met this girl.
Oh no, and now I remember. Yeah, so this same girl, she invited me to go to this English or this Portuguese class.
Yeah.
Which I went to, which was literally 30 minutes later. And she is like a sort of illustrator. I'm not really exactly sure what type, but I mean, the stuff that I saw that she's done is very, very well done, like very well executed. So she's an artist. I've not really met any other visual artists or that I know of. I've met a lot of people that, you know, we maybe didn't have the conversation that breached that topic. So that was something you were sharing about yourself.
Sure.
But definitely something that like I know is out there. And I've seen it, but just haven't penetrated the surface yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Yeah, fair enough.
The music thing is really natural and easy to integrate with because all you have to do is grab an instrument and join. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it's happening on like the footsteps of a old church, like on a, you know, in a completely organic, like improvisational setting. You know what I'm saying?
And
like,
I mean, that's also the, like, one of the biggest differences in my eyes between like music as a creative endeavor versus like painting, which is that painting, at least for me, for the most part, is a very solitary activity versus like music, which is inherently communal. And like, it's, you can do it on your own, but I think music always feels better when you're doing it with other people.
If when you were painting, it made some kind of like really appealing sound, like ding 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 ding. I don't know, like some kind of, maybe then it would be like, oh, it's more like an announcement that like there's something that can be interacted with. But because it's inherently like there's no noise, it's not like you're being like, hey, it's not like there's a siren going off and saying like, if you want to participate in this, you can. You know what I'm saying?
You know, man, we would be really interesting. Sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but you just gave me an idea. It would be kind of cool if, like, we got a really big canvas and we had a bunch of different supplies, like some scratchy, like shitty old brushes, some nice brushes, like a rake, a shovel, like all kinds of, like a wet towel, whatever, all kinds of different stuff. And we have buckets of paint, and we have like really, really nice headphones on. And we have microphones like attached to our hands so we can hear what's like what we're doing very clearly. And then we basically don't like try and create an image based off of how it looks, but we try and create music out of the sounds of us making an image onto the canvas. And then that's the result of it at the end.
Whoa. You can shoot it with like overhead, you know, and like have it like a rolled out thing. That's interesting. I've seen some really cool like exhibition type stuff like that where it's like you have like a fucking rope, like a motor that's like flopping like and it's like, you know, they just like add paint, they put the motor in paint and they set it down and it like flops.
Yeah.
And like part of that is like the sound that it makes as it's flopping. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
I think for me, like, I don't know that it would actually be interesting to anyone else except like the people who
No, I think it would be very like, ASMR. I think it would be people would like
potentially,
that.
Yeah, but at least just
I
for
would
me,
watch
man,
that.
like I would go into it just because I would be curious and I would want to experience that and like see what it's like. Because like painting for me is so removed from sound. Like I don't even think about that element at all. Like I mean, I'm listening to music a lot of the time, but I think it'd be interesting to try and like have the physical act of painting be a little bit more tied to another person's involvement, right? Like almost like a jam session where it's like the sounds that I'm making with this brush like then kind of motivate you to do something else in a different way that like combines it, right? And then
I think for the okay, so here's my thing right now is I don't think it's going to be necessarily like I know this is always a controversial thing to bring up, but in this case I'm actually going to make a distinction between being musical and making sounds. And I think that what you would be doing is you're more so working with like this like sort of visceral like itch that you want to scratch about like making a certain sounds in conjunction with one another. You know what I'm saying? Like and there's a spectrum, right? There's stuff that these types of sounds and textures and feelings that you can make while you're making a visual like impact on something that can be witnessed like after the fact. Like there's a spectrum. It's like there's some that are really awful that you can't even bear, like sort of like dissonance in music. And there's others which are like, oh my God, like slippery latex or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That you love. And it's like, that's a spectrum of sensation and experience that is so seldom like established in the art world today. Like there's obviously things which pay homage to that unconsciously, but to bring it forward as a conscious expression in this kind of way would be very fascinating exploration, and it might catch on. Who knows? Like I don't know. I think if you're next to me and you've got like like a cloth hand wrapped around your thing, and you're like taking it and you're going like, like that's the thing. My response is gonna be like, I want to get something slippery and like try to contrast that like you know what I'm saying, more rough scratching, and like it would be
really
something
smoother. I mean, dude, the more I think about this, the weirder it sounds. But I just think it would be like a fun thing to like goof around with one day. Like, just as a kind of
I'm so down
goof more than anything else.
Now, the whole thing that with having it be with microphones is for the purpose of that is so that it could be shared with other people. So like with the experience that we would be having.
But also, man, because like I would want to isolate
with the headphones.
The sound. Yeah, so like I would have the microphone.
Like, that's why you said high quality headphones. So it's like you're getting it whispered in your ear.
It's almost like you're creating your own ASMR live and listening to that, but then also like blocking out any other like extraneous like, you know, sounds or like influence. You're literally just
you're just in that
from that microphone.
Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
The idea is very good. I totally get it, and I think it's very executable.
Potentially.
I think it's very executable.
We did actually. I mean, speaking of like communal, like how painting is very solitary, like we did do a painting together. At least one that I can remember. I'm sure there were others that I'm forgetting about,
that just sort of slipped through the cracks or whatever.
Yeah, but dude, that experience was like interest. I actually like. Yeah, I'm trying to recall the actual act of doing it with you because like I can't bring it to the forefront of my memory. But like,
all right, I have a very good memory for this kind of thing. Because I remember we finished stretching it. It was in 6x8 in 3 inches or whatever.
It was massive. Yeah, really big canvas.
And it was with drop cloth, right? And we were like looking at it, like just so kind of like amazed with the fact that we had created this thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think we felt like we were being bad boys because we were like, we just really wanted to fucking paint it. But we were like, no. It's like 1 a.m. We can't get started on this right now. Mm-hmm. And like, because we also wanted to prime it, right? We wanted to put some white paint on it so it was a nice, clean, ready to go.
Right.
And I think like one of us just like took like a fucking brush and was just like, you know what I'm saying? And we're like, all right,
got into it. Yeah.
We just like started it up. And next thing you know, like it was 4 a.m. and we were like, all right, I think it's good. And we were done.
Man, I think you're right. That is how.
Dude,
that canvas wasn't even primed. It was literally just like raw drop cloth.
Raw cloth, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. With house paint.
And like, the thing is like, that experience of painting that was very enjoyable in the sense of like being able to make complimentary like gestures on the canvas in response, basically both compensating for what the other person had just done, but also like complimenting it, right? So it's like, and then there were other times when we would both be going at the same time, not looking at what the other person was doing. And then we would step back and look at it and be like, oh, fuck, like, dude, you know, what you did there makes me think that this needs to happen here, right? And it was like, we're talking about either shape or the color that we like, the palette that we were like getting into, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or like filling a particular space or like adding a moment to this quadrant of the painting or whatever. I do remember having those kinds of conversations.
And you know, for the fact that we don't have it with us right now, the painting itself is like, I would qualify it as abstract expressionism, right?
Where is that painting?
It's rolled up in my mom's basement.
It's still there? Oh man, okay. I'm glad it still exists somewhere.
Yeah, we have it.
Man, that's actually where what I wanted to say as well, is that it's an abstract painting, and I feel like that style of painting is a little bit more conducive to like collaborating with somebody and like working on something together. Because like if I were to think about
fun,
some of the stuff that you're doing now with your painting, which is like a much more representational, and like me as well, it's much more representational. And I think like if we were to try and combine the way that you work and the way that I work into an actual representational image, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it would be harder to find compromise and to like try and come up with something that feels cohesive. I think it would just feel a little bit.
It just takes a lot more time, man. It takes a lot more time, and it takes a lot more like deliberation over. Like you can't just go with your gut and take 2 colors, slap them together, and be like, all right, this is a new thing, put it on it, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be like looking at what's already there, and if someone else is making that decision for you in a different place, it would be fascinating to see how it comes out. I think it would be worth the shot to do like a line sketch of something and then just try to fill it with like our different techniques for mixing color, and that would be, I think it would be a beautiful finished product.
It
would be, Kirschner, the painter.
Yeah. Ernst.
So a lot of his stuff has like, yeah, I think so. A lot of his stuff, like, I think it might end up looking like that to some extent, because a lot of his stuff, like people's faces will have like a one color stroke that continues down their body or something.
Yeah, sure.
But then it's also like there's different modes of the same color within the same painting that
I think
might look really cool.
I agree with you. I think the biggest barrier when I'm trying to think about like the way that you paint and the way that I paint is that like at least right now I'm working in a way that's very, very meticulous and like controlled. And you work in a way that's much looser and like more free. And I think I would have a hard time like finding that middle ground of kind of letting go of the control that I'm used to having with a paintbrush now, because it's like so ingrained into my process. Like I would have a hard time trying to meet you halfway there in terms of it being loose.
I think you're mistaken right now, because the painting that I want to continue to do going forward is going to be that very meticulous and detail-oriented type work.
Okay.
So, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to... I want to make stuff that's, like, you know, very, like, well, like, planned and executed. Okay. So I think that that's why it would be, like, basically taking that... It would take more time, the two of us working on something like this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be something we start at 1 a.m. and finish at 4, right?
No. This is like a little bit more of a planned process. Like,
yeah. But it's been done before. I've seen people like have these types of paint where they both did it, and it works really well because I'm left-handed. So if you're on my left side, we can both access the canvas really comfortably.
Yeah. So man, like I have like this is not exactly the same thing, but like whenever we do murals with the collective, like what we'll do is come up with a design together, and we'll like have a drawing or a sketch laid out, and then we'll like actually do a mock-up of the final mural digitally, right, with shading and everything. And that's a very much a collaborative process, in the sense that like Vinny is the one who typically like creates the shapes and like all of the basic colors, and then I'll go in with a lot of the shading. And like the first part where we come up with the concept is like the two of us actually sketching on an iPad together, coming up with ideas. So we kind of go back and forth. Like, it's like a conversation.
Wow.
But I also think like that's different in the sense that it's like already totally fleshed out as a final product digitally, and then we project it and then replicate it onto the wall, because that's like the easiest way to do it with a mural. I think what's different here is that I imagine we wouldn't actually have an idea of the final painting, but we could potentially do some drawing together and try and lay out the composition of the final painting, right? And then go in with color and kind of explore that.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah, man, I would love to do this. I think I also know what the painting we're gonna do is.
The first party.
Of course. It has to be, man. It has to be.
Yeah, I think we're both at a place now, like where our like chops like are good enough for us to actually execute what we know we like want to see out of that painting.
And I think it needs to be a really big painting. Like I'm talking like maybe 200 centimeters by 160. Like,
dude, it really would be something which I think should pay homage to Bruegel. Because his kinds of paint...
100%, dude. But, like, when I imagine that painting in my head, I always think of Bruegel. Like, I think that's where the inspiration came from to begin
Absolutely.
with, right?
Because some of his paintings look like they could be in the first party.
You're not wrong about that. I do think, though, that, like, a lot of Bruegel's stuff, especially when he has, like, village people and stuff like that, like, it's very, very detailed, and there's so much going on. And I think the scales of those paintings, it's like... You're looking at a very wide scene from far away with 15, 20 people in it. And I think I would try and actually bring it out a little bit more. Or I'm sorry, zoom in a little bit more and do 4 or 5 people, something like that. Just because I think it'd be a little more manageable. And I don't know.
I think so too. I agree.
In terms
I don't think so. I think we have to work up to that.
Well, neither of us are ever going to fucking achieve that, dude. Bruegel is
who knows?
Of all legends, man.
Oh, well, yeah, but who knows? Like, it would be cool to be getting better and better. Because I love that style of composition with, like, you know, what I love about his paintings is like how uniform, like because of his limited access to different colors in his palette, like you see like 4 or 5 different colors of paint that are just being used as many versatile ways as possible.
Yeah, man.
I love like that modal type stuff, you know. So I guess nobody knows what the first party is.
I'll describe it briefly, but I also don't want to give too much away because I really want to paint this with you at some point. Like this.
Okay, well, you don't have to describe it.
No, let me give a brief, just for people listening. So Connor and I came up with this idea for a painting. I don't know, 4 or 5 years
before we
ago.
even painted.
And yeah, exactly. I don't even think either of us had started painting at that point. And it was originally an idea which just made us laugh, I think, which honestly, more and more in my life, I feel like those are always the best ideas, or ones that are just like, makes you laugh. You think it's silly. But the concept was to paint a depiction of the first time people ever fermented like wheat or barley and then accidentally drank it and found out that it was alcohol. And we named the painting The First Part because it's like incidental kind of like someone stumbling
something you're just having
totally
a fucking
new
blast.
Experience of just being drunk for the first time. And so like that's I think why we related to Bruegel too, because a lot of his paintings were like kind of, I don't know if it's medieval exactly, but it's definitely like a time period where it's, you know, like pretty rudimentary in terms of like development and human evolution. And so like that kind of, you know, these like villages with like, you know, people making barrels of beer and stuff. Although it probably was much earlier than that. Like it was probably closer to like, I don't know, like the first, whenever
semi-nomadic, dude. Semi-nomadic.
Like the first agriculture. So I don't know, man, but I love the idea. It still makes me laugh. Like, and I think we should definitely paint it.
Like I think in the one that we first tried to execute, because we went out and tried it. Like we were not ready for this, but we tried it. Dude, we painted like a yurt. We painted like a little,
exactly.
And it was like in the yurt, you could like see like some rudimentary like wheat, barley type stuff, and like a tipped over jar, and like I think we were onto something there. I remember roughly what the composition was. There's definitely a camel like crossing. You know,
dude, there was. I think I might have a photo of this. If I do, I'll track it down and send it to you. But dude, you know what?
I would love to see that.
At least in my memory, the reason we gave up on that one, not only because we probably weren't ready for it, but also because I got fumed out because I think we were mixing oil paint and acrylic paint together.
No, we weren't. We were like, we can do this. We can do this.
I think we really genuinely had no idea what was going on. And I just remember like, you know, like tubs of turpentine in that apartment and just like getting fumed out that
we gotta open the window. Oh, I think I got a headache.
Yeah,
as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, I actually kind of love the smell of turpentine.
I don't know that I can relate to that. I'm not a huge fan of it. Yeah.
I mean, it was weird. I remember when I was a little kid, and this is a total tangent, but I was a little kid and I was riding with my grandma, Brady, and she was filling up gas at the gas station. I said, "Grandma, I like the smell of gas." And she's like, and she was like, it was so cute because I was so innocent, and she is too, you know. And she's like, you know, I kind of do too. I remember that. I was a little kid. I was probably like 3 or 4 years old, just barely able to talk, right? Isn't that weird?
Okay.
I remember it's just a very early... Weirdly, like in small doses, like when you open the car door at a gas station and like comes in for the first second, I like it. But then like obviously if you're going to be in an environment where it smells like gas for a long time, like that's not fun. That sucks. But just like the gentle like aroma hitting you for a second is what I think what was experienced as a look that I liked.
Because man, very like weird. One of my favorite smells, or a smell that I really like, is the smell of like cow manure, like a cow pad.
Unpopular opinions.
Yeah, for sure. But it's because I've thought about this before, and I've like, I don't know, like when I was younger, I used to kind of like say that to people as like trying to be edgy or whatever, and like now you're like, you know, like I love the smell cow poo, but now it's like I've reflected on it a little bit more, and dude, for me it comes down to nostalgia because like I just remember being a kid in the summer and like driving through Switzerland, like where my grandma lived. And like, there's cows everywhere. And so you're like driving down in the mountains or down a field or whatever, and you just smell it through the window. And so as purely nostalgic.
Smell association, yeah.
Exactly. But now I'm curious about your
Maybe you
gas
actually
smell.
did inherently like it a little bit. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is like in the moment that it hit you,
Maybe.
you know, maybe you
but
did.
There is
as a
something
kid,
so...
you don't have these constructs in your head that like, oh, this smells bad, this smells good. Obviously, I think it like probably evolutionarily, like we do have something hardwired that says we shouldn't go stick our nose in a pile of dung. But like,
No.
you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's just the aroma, like from a distance, like just hitting you for a brief moment, and you're like a kid fucking on cloud 9, you know, then you might appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, potentially, dude. Potentially, yeah. Man, okay, we were talking about like sound and painting and like how to relate those two things. Something that I've always wanted to try and figure out is a way to connect smell to visual art. Because like smell is I think it's very linked to memory, and it's something that like makes me feel emotion sometimes like more viscerally than any other kind of sense. Like maybe sound and music every once in a while, but like when I
smell is way more powerful.
It's so much more powerful. And like I'm so curious about like whether or not it would be possible to somehow relate those two things together and like create. It doesn't even have to be visual art, but like try and like encourage people to bring back memories or feel nostalgia by creating something that is like smell forward. Like if you were to go into an exhibition and like every little room you enter has like an aroma in it, like
and then the paintings like, also reflect what might be a memory associated with them.
But like so for like another one of my favorite smells is, and this is so specific, but it's like if you're smelling barbecue, like someone barbecuing, but not in your yard, but like next door. Like if you catch a whiff of barbecue like from a distance,
that's the best.
That to me is very nostalgic. And so like trying to recreate that smell, or like, dude, for me, the smell of like laundry detergent is really nostalgic. And so like, I just think it'd be so interesting to try and, but okay, this is my.
But that would be a great, that would be a great source of inspiration as well. Like taking those smells and making like 3 or 4 paintings for like each wall that are reflective of where you would likely smell that smell, or a subject that is associated with that smell.
It's like creating a multi-dimensional experience surrounding a certain like a feeling or subject, right? It's like not just limited to it being visual, but it also has to
love that.
Smell. And you could do.
I think that's a very, very cool idea.
Yeah, but so dude, this is okay. But this is what the barrier that I've always run into, because I've mentioned this to other people in the past as well. Is can you capture smell in that way? Like, is it?
Yeah,
is
how
it
are you gonna get this?
Dude, like.
How are you gonna get that?
But dude, this is the problem. I don't know if it's technically possible to recreate the smell of barbecue coming from someone else's backyard.
Dude, you could just literally get a grill. I don't know how
smell works in that way.
You could literally get a grill.
Dude, how do you capture it in a bottle? Like, how do you store that?
You don't.
Have it readily available.
You have it in like a inconspicuous box in the middle of the room that has like ventilators in it. That like it's just basically a grill with a fan underneath it with like something that's covered so you can't
like actually having a grill cooking.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work because then
no. You don't. I'm not saying you actually have a grill cooking. I'm saying that you have a grill, something that's been so saturated with the smell of the grill, maybe even the grill itself, with a fan that pushes that smell into the air, but you don't you know what I'm saying? Like maybe you would have to do it in some way where there is no object in the room that reflects that. It's like, the point is to get the smell in there. So maybe you would have it in the ceiling or underneath something that's like hidden that like is the source of that smell. So that when you enter the room,
that I'm not worried about. What I'm worried about is actually getting this, like creating the smell.
Dude, that's what I'm saying this is.
No, I know. Okay. No, you're not, dude. Because like
manure.
Yeah.
You get manure, like dry it out, and put a fan on it. Like I know that sounds gross.
So you're saying like actually just have the smell. Okay, so for some things that could work, right? But like for manure, for example, like after a few days, or a week or a month or whatever, the smell is gonna change. Yeah. And so you'd have to be replacing it constantly. With food, with barbecue, same thing, man. You're going to have to be replacing it constantly. So, like, I think the ideal scenario is, like, Like, okay, people who create perfumes, right? They're able
Yeah.
to like create certain smells. Can you make an artificial smell that is close enough to something like manure or gasoline or whatever
I think I
else?
have, dude, I think I actually have the people that you need to talk to if you actually want to try to execute this.
I
And
really
it's
do
really,
actually want to
it's
try.
really funny, man, because this is the thing from the Czech Republic. And it's like just down the street. It's in like, I think Malastrana.
It is.
And these things, these people make perfumes, and they like have like, they use like charcoal, like they have like burnt wood. And I think their whole thing is they want to make like new scents.
Okay, I might go and talk to them.
You should go talk to them.
I'm sure there's like, you know, like
Yeah,
I
here's
can answer
here's
this.
their posters. Wait,
Can you?
yeah.
I think. Can you send me a photo of one of those after? It doesn't. Have to
Sure,
be-
yeah, the address is literally on it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Man, I'm sure this could like actually be answered very quickly on Google, but I almost
Yeah.
don't want to look it up. Like I want to go and like actually do like the on the ground research and see if it's possible, because it's like an idea I've had for such a long time.
Yeah. But I think that's a very cool idea to explore, because for me, like, yeah, like what you're saying, like this thing is the element of smell is such a profound emotional, like, association. Like,
Yeah.
so that to me would be such a fantastic way to really actually change the moods of people. But not just like relying solely on looking at a painting is not going to take you out of, like, smell almost transports you, right?
It does.
Looking
yeah.
at a painting is not going to transport you unless you're already transported into a place where you're going to want to look at that painting.
Yeah.
But if you can give someone a smell that like predisposes them to being immersed in that environment where a painting depicts something which is associated with that smell, it's like the smell comes first and then the appreciation comes after, because you've developed this
Yeah.
visceral association that people have to it.
Definitely. The only thing as well, like another issue would be that, like, I think in the same way that, like, I said cow manure is my favorite smell and gasoline is one of your, like, a smell that you enjoy, like, everybody has their different
That's
triggers.
So
Or, like, what
special.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think there are certain ones that we can say must be universal to some extent. What
Like
about the
what?
smell of
After
humidity?
rain. Okay.
Yes.
Very
yes.
similar. Yeah.
We both just said it at the same time. I don't know if it's just because we're weirdly similar or whatever, but I think that actually is a universal thing. Like,
I think
after
you're
rain
right.
would be an amazing one to try to duplicate.
I also think, like, saltwater, ocean,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Like
probably
seafood.
one. Yeah.
That would not be a hard one to do. I think if you're in like a port, you probably have a decent amount of resources in order to set this up for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a really cool gallery.
It would be interesting, man. Yeah,
if you were able
definitely.
to, I think what really would, you wouldn't want to make it be like explicitly like, this is a smell art gallery. You
No.
would just say like, this is an art gallery, and really well design it so that the smells are in each of the rooms separately.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even
Then
think
it's
you
like-
need to mention the smell
necessarily,
necessarily, right?
exactly.
It's like something that's
That's
just
the whole
part of
point.
the experience.
It's the whole point. Because as soon as you mention it, that nostalgia is going to be like stunted. You're going to be like, too conscious of the fact that you're like there to try to travel back in your memory. But like that. But then when you when those smells hit you, it's something because you absolutely don't expect it that then transports you.
And the
So
thing
you
is,
would
like,
actually, it would be essential to not say that the smells, that there's a fucking pile of manure with a fan behind them.
yeah, there's a poop room. But man, like I feel like everyone walking through, if you picked enough of them, like would have a different experience in each room, and some people might really relate to some, and some people might not at all. But I would love to like meet someone who has the same nostalgic relationship to cow poo that I like, actually having to.
Dude,
like, getting
I
to
don't think it's
interact
that
with someone
weird.
like
I don't think it's as weird as you
you're right,
think.
it's not. It's just like not something that like I'm not going to make that connection with another human being like just in an organic conversation 98% of the time, right? But like this would allow me to like share that experience with somebody else
Absolutely.
in a very visceral way, which
So
would be
then
really, really cool.
What we are proposing then would be sort of two different models, which would could either be executed at the same time in juxtaposition with one another, or in two separate events. And in either one is where it's like you would have explicitly like a write-up on a wall in print that says this is a room dedicated to my memories associated with living in the countryside in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And as a result, we're including like something which is representative of that smell. What do you think it is? Question mark or something that I'm saying.
Dude,
like
I wouldn't even be that explicit. I really wouldn't. Like,
but no, and the other
describe.
you're
All right, go. I'm sorry.
The other half is the attempt to try to do it subliminally to people, where it's something which is very universal, like the smell of dew, right?
Got you.
That would be the other gallery, like maybe juxtaposed with one another, where it's like, okay, in this room, you are explicitly stating these are your subjective memories, right? With smells associated. In the other rooms, those smells are there, but you don't write it. But maybe that would be like, maybe people would pick up on it and they'd be like, oh, they're doing that in here too. Or maybe they wouldn't. And it would be like crazy. I don't know. Would you have to have two separate events or would it be in the same event? I think you could try both ways.
I think you could. I still like I really believe that not saying anything would be the way to like I think that's gonna yield the most interesting result in terms of people's reaction. Like any kind of explanation to me, like I don't know. I don't know that it would add to the experience. I think it would take away from it. Because then people are like coming in with some preconceived notion, or they're like feel like it's almost like manipulative in a sense where it's like, oh, this is what you should be smelling or feeling when you're in this room, as opposed to just like wandering into a room and like maybe feeling nostalgic or being brought back to another place, but maybe not, right? It's like totally up to your own kind of like it's your connection to it that decides what happens. But
no, I think it's interesting. I think either one would be worth giving it a shot. Like, I think it would be cool. I do like it when you go into like a gallery and the artist has put like a really like statement about like what I don't like it to be like too like slanted in like a particular, like this is a commentary on this or that. I like it when it's more like from their own subjective experience like this. I think that would be beautiful. Like, you know what I'm saying? Having a version of this where you've got the smells and you also have the story associated with that smell for you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That would be a very pleasurable thing for me as someone, even if I don't have an association to that smell in particular, to learn about your experiences that way by explicitly stating it, right? So I think both models would in the other scenario, you don't have that context. You're just going into a room with paintings that have, that there's a smell associated to that you're hoping that maybe someone's past experience will also allow them to see that as well.
Yeah, you're right. I see the value of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, kind of on that topic, like, are you like, when you post a painting or even share a painting with somebody, is that something you're thinking about, like the story of the painting behind it or where it came from? Like, is that something you're also telling people? Because you mentioned it and I love that idea, and it's something that I don't do at all.
It's
like,
fantastic.
I kind of feel the same way as you in the sense that I'm used to this model of like going into a gallery or some exhibition space and then reading the description and it being very kind of pretentious or like a little bit too like deep.
I think they just need to be more humble.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to have some humility.
Yeah, so like my kind of reaction to that experience has been so far that I just don't explain anything. I'm like, I'd rather just speak for itself.
But I think there's a way to execute it.
Yes. And I think there's a middle ground where, like you're saying, it's not so much about, what this means or what the significance is, but more like
the projection. Like, it's more of an introspection.
Like, I had a dream about a chair with tiger print pattern on it and then a kiwi sitting on the table next to it, so I painted. Like, just like some little blurb or some random thought.
It's a great idea.
I'm actually going to paint that later today. Now that you said that.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I
didn't
have a dream about it. I just came up with that and now I'm going to paint it. But dude, like, I think that's like, that's really valuable, and that like adds a level of like, I don't know, just another way for people to relate to what you've created. But I don't know if that's something you do already because you mentioned it.
No, so I do the same thing. I have that reaction where it's like I am doing it's actually, I think, sort of naive and immature to completely respond by rejecting any sense of giving anyone anything about what they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Do you try to come up with some quippy title that maybe you hope conveys something that would be associated with that?
There's a lot of ego involved in that, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that's actually ironic because what you were trying to do is completely remove your ego from it, but as a result, you ended up just being a super like egotistical like asshole.
I actually think you're right, man. Yeah.
I think what the way to do it for me would be is essentially what you're saying is like basically just go into a free form writing thing that gives information that are associations that you feel to what the image is, right? Mm-hmm. You can even say like, well, this is where I got this object from, or this is, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is, I don't know, my cat, right? Or I don't know, whatever the story is behind it. I want to know what that is. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't want to come up with any examples right now because I don't really feel like it, but like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, dude, this is maybe also part of the reason I haven't done this is because for me, so many ideas that I get for paintings, like the source is so esoteric and kind of like just random. Like there isn't that much of a story behind a lot of what I paint. Like
it doesn't matter. I think you should still make the effort to like put in like, hey, this is where I was when I realized that I was going to put this kiwi on the table, or like, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
what is that bit of information there? Like,
or it's just like the starting point, or yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And it's gotta, you know what I'm saying? It's gotta be 100,000% like the exact thing that happened. You can't like take creative liberties and make it more like what you think it should be. It's gotta be exactly what it is.
Just
and in
honest,
that sense,
like direct to the point. Like, yeah. No, exactly. I like that idea. I like that idea, man. I might try and do that more.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to as well. So I've just sort of like steered away from it because what is it that we're trying to react to? What is our reaction against? That's something that I kind of like.
For me,
I like to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reaction for me is against this notion that like a painting or a piece of art in any medium needs to then be described by the artist and like some meaning or significance beyond the object needs to be ascribed to it, right? Where it's like, oh, this isn't just a painting, it's a reflection or a commentary on this political issue, social issue, whatever. And look, there's a time and a place for that. Like I think there's a place for political art that has a commentary about, you know, social issues, whatever. I'm not saying that's not valuable, but I also think there's room for shit that has nothing to do with anything. Like art for the sake of being art. And like,
I agree. I think a lot of people sit in their studio and they're like, how am I going to be political? Which is the opposite of why you should paint something political. You should paint something political because you're out in the world and you get accosted by something that is so impactful to you that your only reaction is to be able to paint it and represent it in some way. Yeah, and that to me is what makes really good. When someone is just like sitting there thinking about their politics and like how they can get them to come across through their art, that to me is what is the core of like with the pretension that we're trying to react against here. Dude, it becomes 100%. Very whiny. It becomes very like you're just whining about like what you believe.
To me, it's like pandering, right? It's like, it's something that happens after the fact. Or even if it's like purposeful when they start the painting, like, I want this to be a commentary on this. Like, or it's something where they finish it and then they decide, oh, actually, I'm going to say that this is what it's about to seem more thought-provoking. Like, either way,
it's hot air. It's hot air.
Exactly, hot air. And it's like not coming from a place of actual like genuine interaction with like the world or some stimulus that made you feel that way. It's that like, oh no, I am pretending. I am trying to be something that I'm not. And because the art world has this reputation for being very kind of like, ooh, pretentious, blah, 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 like I'm going to play into that in order to appeal to this like audience of people. Who are
like fit that model. Like it's almost like people are trying to bring this like fitting into a mold that was established as, I don't even know when. Like I
would say that
I think it's ultimately an illusion.
50 years. Yeah.
I think it's an illusion too, though, because the world that stuff was created in, you ultimately have, even if you study all of the history that there is on a particular like archetype that you're like, you know, focused on, like, okay, I want to be able to write like correct art descriptions, that even if you think you can imagine what the context was and what inspired and created like the internal experiences that made people write what is perceived today as being like the correct form of an art description, you ultimately will not be able to duplicate it because you unfortunately are not then in that time. So you cannot accurately create that now.
Yeah.
you are stuck with where you are at. And while, yes, I think it could be good to study those things and learn about them, I think the fact that it comes off as pretentious today is because it's just ingenuine, because it's people trying to fit a model that was established before them.
Exactly, man. But dude, that's why I react against it. And it seems
I think if you want to fit that model, you should just completely ignore the fact that you're trying to do anything at all, and then you will end up fitting that model, because you're writing a description about a piece that is situated in the contemporary world in which you live. And that's like essentially what I think.
Right. But there is also, and like, dude, I don't subscribe to this at all. And I also like, it's not something that I feel like I'm like fighting against necessarily, but I'm also aware that there's a certain attitude in the fine art world in particular about like, you know, there's a certain like acceptance.
Can you give some examples maybe? Like I want to hear like, yeah, because I know what you're saying. I just want to know like more explicitly, like what are these people like?
Okay. Here, this is like the first example that comes to my mind, right? Which is that like my sister just went to a museum. I don't know where in the world it was, but it was like there was an exhibition of modern art in this museum, and like she sent me a bunch of photos of it and asked me what I thought, and like a lot of these pieces were like man, I'll try and pull up the photos and like put it on the podcast. I'll try and send it to you later too. But like,
sure,
very, very minimalist, abstracted, like conceptual art, where it's like something's written on the wall using some strange material in like a very messy way, right? And then there's like a random object placed in front of it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like, that is the art, right? Like this is and this idea of something being conceptual, kind of overvaluing the the relationship that like or the emotional relationship I would have with something. It's like thinking about art more than it is feeling a piece of art, right?
Or looking at it.
Yeah, or it's also this kind of like notion that like art is serious, and that art needs to be in order to be taken seriously, you have to make serious art, which means that you have to describe some profound experience through your art. You have to describe your struggle. You have to talk about some issue that relates to you. And that can be art, but it's not the only kind. And what I find is that, especially in the fine art world, at least, I'm painting with a very broad brush. I'm not saying this is everything, but there are a lot of examples of people in the fine art world overvaluing this kind of conceptual, high-minded, serious art over art that is just like silly and comes from a place of joy or fun, right? And so like a lot of the ideas I come up with, it's just like, what's an image or something that would make me feel good, happy, or a memory that makes me feel happy, or even just a silly idea. And that as a product can have just as much value, even though it's not serious.
Now here's the thing, Julian, though. In the same way that your lack thereof description in your piece, like post, you know, like that reaction against giving any kind of like description there in the description itself, as opposed to the art, I would ask you to reflect for a second and think maybe your art is also a reaction to any sense of having didactic or like, you know what I'm saying, like a meaning that's trying to be expressed through it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe there's somewhere in the middle that like in the same way that we could add more description to the painting itself, that the actual content of that painting could maybe swing a little bit more towards that middle ground as well. Because I agree, like for me, the whole thing that's really kept me going in wanting to be creating paintings is the idea that I want to have an aesthetically pleasing object on the wall in my living space.
That's interesting.
Right? The color combination and code of the room that I'm sitting in, like that to me is the greatest value, which is weird, right? It sounds very shallow, but like that, it has absolutely no, like, it's almost like if you were to just look at it as a newborn child or someone who's having a stroke, and they don't have any preconceived idea about what they're looking at, that the room in which that painting is situated in, that painting works in harmony with the objects that are around it. And the actual objects in the painting itself, it is what you're describing, but you're doing it from more of a weird ideological standpoint. That it's like, I'm going to paint things that just are juxtaposed in a way that there's really not any meaning. But for me, it's like actually just more so the color blocking that's happening in that. You know what I'm saying?
But man, I'm actually more like reflecting now, like, and pitting the two things against each other. But like the reason that I paint the subject matter I do is not a direct reaction to anything. I mean, maybe subconsciously, but it's not like something I've chosen to do where it's like, oh, fuck serious shit, I'm gonna do stuff that's silly. Like that's not the thought process. Like it really
unconsciously though kind of is.
Potentially, but it also comes from a genuine place of like the act of painting, the process of doing it brings me joy. And so I try and like express that through the paintings by creating images that are also joyful. Like,
that's great.
That is kind of the A to Z in my mind of how it works. I'm not discrediting the fact
no, but I would ask you to think like what percentage of your unconscious expression, the things that are in your subconscious that I think are a reaction to what you're saying is like you don't want to have this like more conceptual art, or you don't want to have this like ideology instilled in your paintings. What part of you is just trying to react against that in the same way that you are having a complete lack of description also accompanying your work?
Dude,
what percentage? I don't think it's the majority by any sense, because the art you're making is amazing and I love it, right? So
it's a part of it.
But I will say that there is a part of that. There is a percentage of that that's influencing you that you haven't considered.
Absolutely, man. You're right. It is part of it.
It's like
I don't know that I can
time.
put a number. No, this is fantastic, man. Like I don't know that I can put like a percentile attached to it, but like you're right. It's something that I maybe don't consider enough, is that there is that kind of reactionary reason for what I
love
do.
that.
But dude, it's also like actually the more that I become aware of it, the more I'm leaning into it. And it might sound weird, but I also feel like there's kind of like a lack of narrative or a lack of like conversation, at least in like the things that I'm aware of like people talking about art and creativity from this perspective of it just being, I don't know, man, like not so entrenched in the fine art world. Like I like the idea of like talking to people like you, like friends of mine who are like doing it themselves, right? And have like it is maybe a reaction, and it is like, coming from a place of ego sometimes of like, well, I don't like this, so I want to like kind of imprint my own thing into it. But I think it's worth exploring and talking to people about, because I think it's interesting, and everything has to have a reaction, right? Like any action is going to have a reaction. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like reacting to something in a way that for me has like a net positive effect ultimately, right? Like also is like a lot of the messaging for me comes down to like also reacting to the fine art world in the way that it works, in a way that encourages other people or inspires other people to believe that they could do it as well, right? That they don't need all of these kind of like, official stamps of approval or like, whatever it might be in order to make art, because ultimately that's what it's about.
Unless that's what you want to do. Right. Sure. I just think what ends up happening is people who are interested in trying to do that are discouraged because they think that there's like all these like courses that they need to go through in order to like get there.
Yeah.
And like, yes, like those courses are there, but it depends on what you want to achieve and how much willpower you have to achieve it. And I think you can go the route of like, autodidactic, like develop your own styles, or you can go and, take classes on how to create 50 different shades of chroma on someone's face. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point is, at the end of the day, I think what it's got to come down to is whether or not you have the willpower to breach the barriers of where you would like to get yourself and where would you like to be, right?
Yeah. No, you're right, man. That is kind of like the common denominator, right? It's just like you have to be determined regardless of what path you choose to take. Yeah. No, dude, look, and like I sometimes like slip into like a mode of speaking where I sound like very kind of like my way or the highway. Like I'm anti anything that goes against my philosophy when it comes to art. And that's not the case. Like you're right in saying that like it depends what you're interested in. And if you're the kind of person where you really value being like validated by the fine art world, or you want to be part of that, or it's something that comes naturally to you, or you want to learn like, really, really technically proficient, like classical painting, then amazing, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also think like there's a lot more people who are promoting that and like valuing that and kind of like putting that on a pedestal and saying
Oh,
that this
sure.
is art, versus the other side of it, which I think sometimes gets kind of like put into this box of being illegitimate or not, like it's like hobby art, or it's like, oh, you're an Instagram artist, or whatever
Mhm.
label they put on it. It's like not seen as being like having as much inherent value as something that is part of this kind of accepted world and language of art,
Yeah,
right?
but I think that's something that's only here's the funny thing is that from the outside world, someone who's not necessarily who's just getting into the art world, I think from the outside, that's the impression that you get, right? You
Yeah.
see these people who are on the pedestal and they're like elite mastery of like,
Yeah.
painting. And then you have these other people that to you on the outside are kind of more like a dime a dozen, like Instagram painters, right?
Yeah.
But from the inside, if you have the willpower to explore and develop, you will realize that everybody is in it just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
And that the people who are putting this stuff up on the pedestal are not doing so because they want to put down the other people that the people from outside of the art world perceive as being somehow lesser. They're doing it because they have some kind of privilege to like a social level where it's like they're able to. You could be the Instagram artist that is on the pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They're protecting their position is what you're
Yes,
saying, right?
it's basically a survival thing. It's like they want to make as much money as they can so that they can continue to do what they love.
Dude,
and I don't blame them for it.
No, me neither. I just don't
like the gatekeeping that it creates, right?
Yeah, but okay, man, and you're right, and like you're right that like I'm at a point now where I also recognize that like those barriers don't actually exist. There's no such thing as a legitimate artist or an illegitimate. Look, there's like levels of experience and how much time and energy you put into something, but like the barriers are absolutely fabricated. But like you said, for a lot of people on the outside, or someone who, let's say, like, they've always liked art and music or whatever, and they're like, I really want to start painting, or I want to start drawing because it's something I'm interested in. I have an inclination towards it. When you're at that point and you're looking at the world that you're about to enter into and learn about, like those barriers do seem real. And it's like, I think, very discouraging for a lot of people because they look at it and they go, okay, it's like, okay, I can kind of like teach this to myself and do it this way, but then I won't ever really be a real artist. Or I have to go to art school to be real, or I have to go to like some training course, or like pay a bunch of money. And like, the barriers don't exist. You're right. But for me, it seems like, I know when I was starting out, it seemed like they existed. And like, I would love to be able to like say to people who are in that position that I was in when I was starting out, like, they don't exist, and you can do it the way you want to do it. If you want to go to art school, go to art school. If you want to be classically trained, go for it. But don't do that because you think you have to. Do it because that's what you really want to do, and that's what's valuable to you. If you want to teach yourself how to paint and you want to make goofy paintings, of kiwis and shit, do that. But do it because that's really what you want to do. Yeah. And that's like what it comes down to.
And if you don't, and you're complaining about it, then you really don't want that for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a trifle. It's like it's a whim. It's a fantasy that that you think you want, but you don't. Yeah. And I ask myself right now, as in conclusion, for today for me, because I've got to jump on another call here, is that whether or not for me, it is a fantasy or a whim to create visual art, or whether it is something that I want to completely indulge myself. Because here I am in the open studio, but is it open really yet?
Not
no,
yet.
It's not. Not yet. You know what I'm saying? Not yet.